pondered over the claim that humans only use 10% of their brains and what could happen if we tapped into the remaining 90%. Let's dive into this intriguing idea and see what science has to say. The 10% myth has been around for a while, with various sources attributing it to Albert Einstein or early 20th century psychologists. The truth, however, is that there's no scientific evidence supporting this notion. It seems to be more of a cultural myth than a scientific fact. Contrary to popular belief, we do use more than 10% of our brains. In fact, every part of the brain has a known function. This is not to say that every single neuron is firing at every moment, but every region of the brain has a specialized job. And even when we're at rest, our brains are buzzing with activity, controlling our heartbeat, digesting food, and dreaming up thoughts. The human brain is a marvel of nature, with around 100 billion neurons and as many as 1 quadrillion connections, known as synapses. It's an incredibly complex and efficient system that's constantly processing information, making decisions, and coordinating actions and reactions. Even the simplest tasks, like picking up a pencil, require a symphony of brain regions working together. Motor areas control our movements, sensory areas process touch and spatial information, and other regions help us predict the pencil's trajectory and adjust our grip. Moreover, brain imaging studies have shown that tasks involving language, memory, and attention engage widespread areas of the brain. Even during sleep, our brains are hard at work, consolidating memories and clearing out toxins. So the idea that we're only using a tiny fraction of our brain's potential isn't just oversimplified, it's flat out wrong. It's more accurate to say that we use 100% of our brains, just not all at once. So it seems that we're already using more than 10% of our brains. But what about 100%? Let's explore this fascinating question in the next segment. To understand the concept of using 100% of our brain, we first need a quick crash course on how the brain functions. The brain, our body's command center, is an intricate network of billions of nerve cells, also known as neurons. Neurons are the building blocks of the brain. They communicate with each other through electrical and chemical signals. Imagine them as a vast sea of interconnected stars, each one lighting up as it sends and receives messages. Now let's talk about how neurons communicate. They do so through a process known as synaptic transmission. Each neuron has branch-like extensions called dendrites that receive signals from other neurons. These signals then travel down a long, cable-like structure called the axon and are sent off to other neurons through the axon's terminals. This process happens incredibly fast, with neurons firing up to hundreds of times per second. But here's an interesting twist. Our brain isn't a rigid structure. It's dynamic and constantly changing, a concept known as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. It's like a city that's always under construction, with roads being built, detours being created, and old paths being renovated. Different parts of our brain are responsible for different functions. For instance, the frontal lobes are involved in decision-making and problem-solving, while the occipital lobes process visual information. However, no task requires only one part of the brain. When you're reading a book, for example, multiple areas light up. The visual cortex processes the words you see, the language centers interpret the meaning, and the memory regions store this information. So the idea that we use only 10% of our brain is a myth. We use all parts of our brain, but not all at once. Just as a symphony orchestra doesn't play every instrument at the same moment, our brain activates different areas as needed to perform different tasks. Now that we understand a bit more about how our brain works, let's delve into what using 100% of our brain might look like. I imagine for a moment all neurons firing at once, every part of your brain lighting up. That's the idea behind using 100% of our brain. But what would that look like? Let's dive into the realm of possibilities. If every neuron were firing simultaneously, we'd likely experience an overwhelming sensory overload. Picture this: your brain processing every sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch with maximum intensity all at once. It might sound exciting, but it would be too much for our system to handle. Moreover, such intense activity could potentially lead to seizures. That's right, a brain seizure is essentially a storm of electrical activity in the brain, where neurons fire in an uncontrolled manner. So using 100% of the brain could actually be quite dangerous. But why don't we use our whole brain all the time? The answer lies in the incredible design of our brain. Our brain is brilliantly compartmentalized, each section assigned with specific tasks. Whether it's the frontal lobe orchestrating our thoughts and actions, or the occipital lobe interpreting visuals, different parts of our brain are active at different times. This selective usage ensures efficient functioning. Imagine if all the apps on your smartphone were running all at once. It would not only drain the battery quickly, but also slow down the device. Similarly, our brain conserves energy by activating only the parts needed for a particular task. Moreover, this selective functioning allows us to focus. If your brain was processing everything with equal intensity, it would be difficult to concentrate on the task at hand. So, our brain's ability to selectively activate different sections is not a limitation, but a feature, designed for efficiency and focus. In conclusion, while the idea of using 100% of our brain might seem appealing, it's not quite the superpower we've been led to believe. It could result in sensory overload, potential health risks, and a lack of focus. So using 100% of our brain at once might not be the superpower we imagined. While the idea of using 100% of our brain might not be feasible or even desirable, our brains still hold immense potential. A fascinating concept that illustrates this potential is neuroplasticity. This is the brain's incredible ability to adapt and change throughout our lives. Just as a river overflows its banks and carves out a new path when an obstacle blocks its course, our brains form new connections between neurons when faced with new experiences or information. This is neuroplasticity at work, and it's why we can learn and adapt to new situations at any age. Think of your brain as a muscle. Just as physical exercise strengthens our muscles and keeps our bodies fit, mental exercises and activities keep our brains healthy and active. Puzzles, reading, painting, playing a musical instrument, or even juggling are examples of such exercises. They challenge our brains and stimulate the formation of new neural connections, keeping our minds sharp and agile. Learning new skills is another way to tap into the potential of our brains. When we learn something new, our brains create new pathways and strengthen existing ones. This process increases our brain's resilience and can even delay the onset of cognitive decline. But it's not just about learning new skills. Staying curious is equally important. Curiosity, the desire to know or learn something, fuels our brain's natural tendency to seek out and absorb new information. It keeps our minds active and engaged, leading to a healthier and more robust brain. Moreover, our brains thrive on variety. So don't just stick to one type of activity. Mix it up. Learn a new language, then try your hand at cooking a new dish, or pick up a book on a topic you know nothing about. The key is to keep challenging your brain, keep it active, and never stop learning. So, while we may not be able to use 100% of our brain at once, we can certainly strive to use it to its fullest potential over time. Remember, the real power of the brain lies not in how much of it we use at once, but in how effectively we use it over our lifetime.